Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today our topic of discussion is anatomy and development of breast, which are also known as mammary gland. So our objectives are describe the broad structure of the breast, give its blood supply and lymphatic drainage, and in the last we will discuss the development of the mammary glands and congenital anomalies related to it. So we will start with breast or mammary glands. They are modified sweat glands of the skin, or we can say modification from the skin. As already we have discussed that when we say a term gland, it means that we are talking about a structure or epithelium which is the invagination from the skin to the underlying connective tissue. So breasts are actually mammary glands. So they are the part of skin or develop from skin. Functional in females for milk secretions and rudimentary and functionless in males. The shape of the breast are hemispherical in shape, that is half circle. If we talk about the extent of the breast, we have two extents, vertical and horizontal. So breast is a mobile structure, but the base of the breast is almost fixed in everyone, and its extensions are from second to sixth rib, that is a vertical extent of the breast. Starting the upper limit is second rib and lower extent is sixth rib, and that we name as base of the breast. And horizontally we will talk about, so from the lateral margin of the sternum to the mid axillary line. What is mid axillary line? That if we draw a line from the middle of the armpit, that is known as mid axillary line. So in the diagram I will also show you. So from lateral margin of the sternum to the mid axillary line, horizontally breast extended. So these positions are relatively common in all the human beings, although the size is variable, but the extent is almost same, that vertically from second to sixth rib and horizontally from lateral margin of the sternum to the mid axillary line. Now, you have already talked about the pectoral muscles. We have the muscle on the upper part of the chest, which is known as pectoralis major, that is covered by a fascia, which is a deep fascia known as pectoral fascia. So, two-thirds of the breast lies in the superficial fascia, the pectoral fascia lying over the pectoralis major muscle, which is a connective tissue. And one-third of the breast lies in the superficial fascia lying on the serratus anterior muscle. So basically, mainly two muscles are involved providing the base to the breast. Two-thirds of the pectoralis major on the chest and one-third of the serratus anterior. And a little bit extension of the breast is also on the abdomen, that is external oblique, but it is a very little extension. Mainly it lies over pectoralis major and serratus anterior muscles. So if we talk about the structures of the breast, as it is a mammary gland, so it has glandular tissue inside, but it has a nipple, a part known as areola, and an extension to the axilla which is known as axillary tail of Spence. What is nipple? A nipple is a conical or cylindrical prominence in the center of the areola, and it is devoid of fat, hair and sweat glands. So it means that in the nipple, which is the central part of the breast, we don't have fat there, we don't have hair, and we don't have sweat glands in the nipple. What the nipple is formed of? Nipple is formed of or formed smooth muscle. A very small smooth muscle is present in the nipple, which make it erect. When the baby is sucking the nipple for the milk, the nipples are little bit erected, and this erection is done with the help of the smooth muscles which are present in the nipple. So they are conical cylindrical prominences in the center of areola dividing on fat, hair and sweat glands, although they contain smooth muscle. Now areola, it is a circular pigmented area of the skin surrounding the base of the nipple, and it contains large sebaceous glands and also contains sweat glands. So dark pigmented area around the base of the nipple containing sebaceous glands, as well as they are also containing sweat glands. And the third structure, which is part of the breast, is a very small part of the breast which extends to the superficial part of the axilla, and it extends from the most upper outer quadrant, which we will show in a minute. So from the most upper and outer quadrant, that is superolateral quadrant, extension of the breast tissue is going toward the axilla, and name it as axillary tail. And Spence is the person who identified this, so it is also known as axillary tail of Spence. So this is the diagram. So it is a hemispherical structure lying, two-thirds is lying on the pectoralis major muscle, and one-third of the portion, so two-thirds is pectoralis major, one-third is lying on the serratus anterior, this muscle, and a little bit portion is lying on the external oblique muscle. It is the muscle of our anterior abdominal wall. So on the anterior abdominal wall, the superficial muscle known as external oblique or external abdominal oblique. So mainly breast is lying on pectoralis major, two-thirds, and one-third on serratus anterior, and little bit on external abdominal oblique muscle. So we talked about hemispherical muscle lying on the structure. So this part where it is lying or attached to the chest wall is the base. Now the center, because it is a prominent or protuberance, so its central portion is known as nipple. So this is the nipple, which is devoid of sebaceous and sweat glands, and it contains a smooth muscle. And the base of the nipple, this is the base of the nipple, which is present over the pigmented area, and this pigmented area, which contains large sebaceous glands as well as sweat glands, they are known as areola. So this is the areola, this is nipple, and this is areola. Now if you see on the areola, there are small projections. So these small projections are of the sebaceous glands, and they also known as them as areolar glands, and these are known as tubercles of Montgomery. So areola is the pigmented area where the base of the nipple is present, and this area contains sweat glands as well as it also contains sebaceous glands, and these sebaceous glands are projected upward and projecting with small tubercles. These tubercles are known as tubercles of Montgomery. Along with that, we can see the hemisection, and in this section we can see the glandular tissue. This is glandular tissue, and these glandular tissue or lobes are separated by fibrous septa or connective tissue. So this whitish gray area is the whitish septa, which is dividing this glandular tissue into lobules, and in between you can see the fatty tissue or adipose tissue. So this adipose tissue is responsible for the size, also responsible for the size of the breast, and from here some extension is going towards the axilla. This portion of the armpit area is known as axilla. So some extension of the breast is going towards the axilla, and that is known as axillary tail. So these are the glands of the breast. Then this is the what we say it as septa or connective tissue, then adipose tissue or fat, and we can see that there are ducts which are known as lactiferal ducts. In another diagram you will see them clearly. So from each lobule or glandular tissue, the ducts are moving or heading towards in vertical direction or radial direction because it is a circular structure. So from every side these lactiferous ducts are moving towards the center, that is the nipple area, and before they enter into the nipple they have some dilatations, and these dilatations are known as ampulla. And along with that, in this diagram we also see ligaments which are known as suspensory ligaments of Cooper, which are supporting the breast. So we will see in the picture. Now this is the lateral view of the breast, and what we can see the chest wall, the ribs, intercostal spaces. Anterior to them we can see the pectoralis major muscle. So as we have discussed already, that most of the breast is lying over the pectoralis major muscle, and anterior to pectoralis major is pectoralis fascia. So from pectoral fascia outward is a part of the breast. So this is breast. And this breast is showing the glandular tissue, the fatty tissue, and you can see these dark color brownish lines are the lactiferous ducts, and before they open into the nipple they become dilated, and this dilated portion is known as ampulla, or also known as lactiferous sinus. So in the breast we have a space which is known as retromemory. Retro means behind. So retromemory space is space behind the breast, which is a space filled with loose connective tissue between the breast and the pectoral fascia. And because this space contains loose connective tissue, so the movement of the breast depends upon this space. So because of this space or presence of loose connective tissue, breast is a little bit movable structure because of the presence of retromemory space, which is lying between the breast and the pectoral fascia. We will see in the picture later on. Now each breast is divisible into 15 to 20 lobules, and lactiferous ducts from each lobule opens on the summit of the nipple separately, and these lactiferous ducts possess a dilated ampulla which is known as lactiferous sinus just before its termination, and fibrous septa separates the loops of the mammary gland. Now there are structures which are known as suspensory ligaments, and very commonly they are known as ligaments of Cooper, because he is the person who identified these ligaments. So suspensory ligament of Cooper's are actually mammary gland is firmly attached to the dermis of the skin by the fibrous septa forming suspensory ligaments. And these ligaments are responsible for the protuberance of the breast in young females. Uh, in early adult life, young life, the breasts are protuberant, and this protuberance is because of the presence of suspensory ligaments of Cooper, which keep them in a projecting position or give them a projecting position to keep them in specified area as well as specified shape. While in old age, due to the atrophy of the surrounding tissues and also the atrophy of the suspensory ligaments of Cooper, the breast become more pendulous. So now the protuberance is not as prominent for that female as it was in the earlier life when she was young. So these ligaments are responsible for the protuberance of the breast, as well as the atrophy of these ligaments causes the breast in the shape of pendulum and known as pendulous breast in old age. Now this is the diagram which is showing the sagittal section, and we can see the rib. This is the second rib, and the sixth rib of breast is extending vertically from second to sixth rib. Anterior to the rib cage we have the muscle which is known as pectoralis major muscle. Now just anterior to the pectoralis major muscle we have pectoral fascia. So this is pectoralis major. Anterior to pectoralis major is pectoral fascia, and breasts are lying on the pectoral fascia. And anterior to the pectoral fascia we have the breast tissue, and in between them this space is known as retromemory space, which is filled with loose connective tissue. So the mobility of the breast depends upon this space, which is known as retromemory space, the presence of loose connective tissue. Now we see the structure of the breast. Each breast is divisible into lobules. This is one lobe, this is another lobe, another. So if you can see, in between them there are septa which are moving forward, which are posteriorly attached to the pectoral fascia, and anteriorly they are moving towards the nipple. So they make 15 to 20 lobules, and these septa are known as suspensory ligaments of Cooper, which we have talked about, extending from pectoral fascia till the area of the nipple, and these are responsible for the protuberant shape of the breast in young females, as we have discussed. And this blue color, what you are seeing, is the glandular tissue, which is actually the epithelial cells, and from there you can see, from the glandular tissue, ducts are moving head in a radial direction towards the nipple, and just before they enter into the nipple, these ducts become dilated. We name it then as ampulla or lactiferous sinuses, and ultimately the sinuses, which are dilatations, again they constrict, and these constricted ducts, which are the lactiferous ducts, open into the nipple. And also you can appreciate the presence of adipose tissue or fat over here. This diagram is also showing the difference between the resting mammary gland, means when there is no pregnancy or no lactation, and when the lactation is taking place, you can see how much the lobules are dilated and the epithelial tissues are dilated. So in the other picture we can also see that later on. Now the arterial supply of the breast, it is having a very extensive arterial supply, perforating branches from the internal thoracic artery. Major artery which is supplying the breast is lateral thoracic artery, which is a branch of axillary artery. Thoracoacromial artery, again branch of axillary artery, and intercostal arteries. These all arteries are responsible for supplying the breast. So here we can see this is the breast. Now this is our axillary artery, which is the main artery running in the axilla, and it gives a branch which is known as thoracoacromial artery, as well as it gives a big branch which is known as lateral thoracic artery. So the major supply to the breast is coming from the lateral thoracic artery through the branches which are known as mammary branches. Along with that, some arteries from the branches which are the lateral cutaneous branches of the posterior intercostal arteries. From the posterior intercostal arteries, branches are coming to supply the breast also. So the lateral area is mainly supplied by the thoracoacromial, lateral thoracic, as well as posterior intercostal branches. And medial part of the breast is mainly supplied by the branches from the internal thoracic artery and its perforating branches, which are penetrating and supplying the breast tissue on the medial side. The same way, the venous drainage, the medial side is drained by the mainly by the branches from the tributaries from the internal thoracic vein and its perforating branches. So many small tributaries enter into the internal thoracic vein on the medial side, while on the lateral side, the lateral thoracic vein, lateral mammillary vein, as well as some medial mammillary vein, they ultimately drain their blood into the subclavian vein. So blood from the breast is ultimately draining into the subclavian as well as axillary vein, mainly the axillary vein, and axillary vein is forward. We'll go to the subclavian, that inshallah we will talk about when you will study the arterial supply in the this coming lectures. So lateral thoracic vein draining into axillary vein, thoracoacromial vein draining into axillary vein, supply and draining the deoxygenated blood from the breast, and from the medial side, medial mammillary vein into the internal thoracic vein, and internal thoracic veins with their perforating veins ultimately drain into the venous system. So when we talk about the lymphatic drainage of the breast, which is very much important in terms of that the carcinoma of the breast occurs due to the lymphatic spread. So this is the diagram of the right breast. What we see, we divide the breast into four quadrants. So we draw a line from 12 o'clock position to 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock position to the 9 o'clock. That means vertical and transverse imaginary lines. If we draw, what we see, this hemispherical structure which we divided into four quadrants. This is superior lateral quadrant, infralateral quadrant, supromedial as well as inferior medial quadrants. This is known as superior quadrant as a whole. This is known as inferior quadrant. This is known as medial quadrant and this is known as lateral quadrant. So if we are talking about lateral quadrant, we are involving superior as well as inferior quadrants. If we are talking about superior quadrant, we are involving lateral as well as medial quadrants. And separately, we can divide them very clearly into superlateral, infralateral, supermedial, and inframedial quadrants. Now, as well as the lymphatic drainage of the breast is concerned, the lateral quadrants, as we have discussed, lateral quadrant means supralateral and infralateral. They are draining into the anterior axillary or pectoral nodes. Medial quadrants, supro and inframedial, both the quadrants are draining into the internal thoracic group of nodes, which are parasternal nodes, and few lymphatic vessels drain into the posterior intercostal. So, for the purpose of description, 75% of the breast lymphatic fluid is moving towards the axillary lymph nodes. So that's why whenever there is a axillary carcinoma and there is a removal of the breast, axillary lymph nodes are also removed because they mostly commonly involved in the carcinoma of the breast containing their secondaries. So 75% of the lymphatic are going to the axillary group of lymph nodes, then remaining is going into the internal thoracic as well as intercostal. As well also the inferior quadrants may drain into the abdominal lymph nodes very superficially, and some lymphatics which are superficial lymphatics communicate with the lymphatic vessels of the opposite breast. Here we can see now this is the right breast and this is the left breast. So this lateral half is mainly going to the axillary group of lymph nodes, which are pectoral or anterior group, and anterior group will ultimately go to the central axillary lymph nodes, and ultimately they will drain into the apical group of lymph nodes. So from lateral quadrant to the pectoral or anterior group of axillary lymph nodes, from anterior to the central, and from central to the apical. The medial half is, as we know, parasternal or internal thoracic nodes. They are draining into this area, and some of the superficial lymphatics are going toward the diaphragm and the superficial part of the abdomen to the liver also, and some of the lymphatics are moving from right breast to the left breast. So why it is important? This is very much important because the spread of the breast carcinoma occurs due to this or through this lymphatic tissue or this lymphatic pathway. And breast carcinoma is the most common tumor of the world in females. A very common tumor in the females. And it is commonly said that if there is a history of breast carcinoma in the family, you have to screen yourself for the breast carcinoma time to time because it can move from one generation to another generation because you have a family history, and it spread through this lymphatic pathway. It, its secondaries of this carcinoma can mainly move to the axillary group. So when the surgery is required, axillary lymph nodes are also removed. They can go to your bones through the parasternal nodes. They can go to your abdomen and liver through the lymph nodes which are going down, and it can involve the right breast can involve left, and left can involve right breast through these superficial lymphatics. So if a person or a female has breast carcinoma, it can be identified or diagnosed by a procedure which is known as mammography. That is a procedure through which you can identify some abnormality in the breast. But the final decision is done by the process of biopsy always. So here you can see the mammogram which is showing some lesions in the breast tissue. So whenever there is a cancer in the breast tissue, what will happen? The skin deepening will be present. So you can see that over the skin of the breast is have depression, which is known as skin dimpling. Why this occurs? Because of the presence of that cancer cells, and also they involve the suspensory ligaments of Cooper. So because of the fibrosis of the ligaments of Cooper, because of the cancer, the dimpling occurs, as well as due to the lymphatic involvement as we have discussed, or due to the edema and the fibrosis of the suspensory ligaments of Cooper, there are small depressions appear on the skin, which is known as pitting, a type of edema known as pitting edema, or the skin is not smooth as you can see over here, but it is pitted. So it appears just like the peel of the orange. If you have seen it, the peel of the orange, there are very minute appearing depressions on the surface. So the same shape of the breast will be in carcinoma, and this occurs due to the edema as well as the fibrosis or consistency ligaments of Cooper, and this appearance is known as PUD orange sign, or it is also known as PUD orange appearance. Another problem which can occur in this will be the nipple will be retracted or deviated because of the problem or because of the cancer cell inside. If this area is involved, nipple can be retracted or deviated, or because of the fibrosis or presence of the cancerous cells, the counter of the breast will not be the normal, it can be abnormal. Normally, as we have seen, it is hemispherical structure, but because of the presence of this cancer, the specific shape of half circle will be not there. So abnormal counters of the breast will be there. So these are the different kinds of the breast carcinoma. Then there will be skin dimpling, there will be small pits on the skin appearing as because of the edema of the skin appearing as meteoric appearance. Nipples will be retracted and there will be abnormal counter of the breast, and this is diagnosed by the process which is known as mammography on mammogram. And final type of cancer as well as its staging will be done by the process of biopsy. So you will study this in detail in histology. Just give an idea. This is a inactive stage of the breast when there is no lactation taking place. You can see the lactiferous ducts, sinuses, and you can see there is more adipose tissue over there. But when the lactation is taking place after pregnancy, you can see the cells are proliferating and start to secreting milk. So this glandular tissue will be more. So the size of the breast will be enlarged because of the dilatation of this glandular tissue, and all the milk will be produced into the lactiferous sinuses, and from there it came out through the nipple. And this is another diagram, a non-pregnant inactive ductal system. You can see during pregnancy the alveoli proliferate at the end of the ducts. So during the time of pregnancy, these ducts which are very inactive stage and there is no alveoli, the alveoli will appear when they start to proliferate and develop. And ultimately, when the pregnancy occurs, milk secretion starts. So in the alveoli, milk secretions are there, so the glandular tissue will be more dilated as compared to non-pregnant stage. So you will talk histologically more about it in the next slide. This is another diagram showing the non-lactating breast as well as the breast during lactation. You can appreciate the adipose tissue here, but you can appreciate more dilated tissue over here, as well as the size of the breast is also increased because of the proliferation and formation of milk inside the glandular tissue. Now that was all about the breast as well as its abnormalities, which are mainly the breast carcinoma. Now we will talk about the development of the breast or mammary glands. As we have discussed, they are modified fat glands. So they first appear as their development first appear in the fourth week of intrauterine life as bilateral bands of thickened epidermis. As we have said that it is an extension from the skin. So thickened epidermis shows bilateral bands and we name them as mammillary lines or we can name them as mammillary ridges. In the fourth week of development, bilateral bands of thickened epidermis appear as mammillary lines and mammillary ridges extending from the mid-axilla to the inguinal region or to the ground region. I will show in the diagram that thing. In the seventh week, these lines extends on each side of the body from forelimb, that is upper limb, to the region of hind limb, that is lower limb. In the seventh week, extension takes place from upper limb to lower limb. Now, the major part of the mammary lines disappear shortly, as we have said that it starts from axilla and going till down to the ground or inguinal region. So most of the part disappears, only the part which is present in the chest or thoracic region that persists. A small portion of the mammary lines in the thoracic region persist and penetrate the underlying mesenchyme. As they penetrate underlying mesenchyme, they become more proliferated and here they form 16 to 24 sprouts which in turn give rise to small solid buds. And these small solid buds start to penetrate inside their tissue. By the end of prenatal life, the epithelial sprouts canalize and form lactiferous ducts. So, as I have told you that initially when these ductal system are formed, there is a closed duct, and as the development takes place, the ducts, the cells present in the lumen of the ducts, they become die through the process of apoptosis, and canal are formed. So by the end of prenatal life, these epithelial sprouts become canalized and form lactiferous ducts. Initially, lactiferous ducts open into a small epithelial pit, which shortly after birth transform into a nipple. So many small pits are present at the nipple for the drainage of lactiferous ducts, which finally become the nipple. At birth, the lactiferous ducts are devoid of alveoli, as we have seen in the previous slide also, that there is no alveoli before birth. They start to develop at puberty, alveoli and excretory ducts form due to hormonal changes, but still they are not functional. So here you can see epithelium, and this is the underlying mesenchyme. So the epithelium is starting to penetrate inside in the 6th week of intrauterine life. Then in the 12th week, it start to divide. That bud, initial bud divide, and as it is dividing, the ducts are canalizing now. So the cells present in this area are dying through apoptosis, and finally, through these multiple openings become a single opening as the nipple, and many ducts are opening into that area, which is known as mammillary pit, or in adult life it is known as nipple. And here you can see the secretory lobule, but there is no alveoli there; they form later on. So that's all about the development of the breast. Now there are some abnormalities which are related to the development of the breast are polytheria, which are axillary nipples. So axillary nipples have formed due to the persistence of fragment of the mammary line. If these fragments or pieces of mammary line will not regenerate or disappear in the early fetal life, there will be presence of other nipples also known as polytheria. May develop anywhere along the mammary line but usually appear in the axillary region, but we can find in other places. Polymastia or supernumerary breast occurs when a remnant of mammary line develops into a complete breast. That way, some part of the mammary line persists and then it transforms into complete breast. That the buds are from here penetrating the mesenchyme and dividing into many branches and then canalizing to forming a complete breast. That is known as supernumerary breast or polymastia. Inverted nipple at the normality also in the fetal life. if the rectifier ducts which are opening into the original epithelial pit that have failed to evert. So when the rectifier ducts open into the epithelial pit which has to form or become a nipple, if normally what happens that all the ducts are opening into that one opening and that opening will be everted at the time of development or afterward. If it is not everting out, the nipple will be there but it will be inverted, so it will be depressed inward, not outward. So we can see a depression in place of a projection of a nipple. So this is the diagram which is showing, so this is our mid-axillary line starting from here and going till the ground region. So this is known as mammary line or mammary region. So at the 7th week of intrauterine life, these lines are present from mid-axilla till the mammary ground region. So just as the development is taking place, these lines become disappearing or they disappear from the axilla as well as from the lower thoracic and abdominal and ground region. If these lines persist, then we have the developmental abnormalities of the breast. As you can see in the line there are many nipples present. These are known as accessory nipples. If this line will persist, nipples can form in this area from inguinal till ground region. Axillary till inguinal region. And if, as we have talked about supernumerary breast, that if in the same line from here the epithelial tissue is penetrating inside into the mesenchyme and dividing like the same way over happening here, that from this part the bud is going inside and dividing into many branches, and then those branches will form the lobules as well as canalizing takes place. The same process if happened in the other part of this line, then extra breast will be formed and this will be known as axillary breast. This is another diagram which is showing the areola. You can appreciate the tubercle from Montgomery over here, nipple, and what you can see that this is normal breast, but in the lower quadrant of the breast you also find a small nipple which is known as polythelia. Supernumerary nipple. Supernumerary breast is known as polythea and supernumerary nipple is known as polythelia if many nipples are there. So here you can see this, why this occurs, because at this line of this portion the mammary line or ridge remain as it is and develop into a nipple which is an accessory nipple or an extra nipple. And finally, gynecomastia, a condition you will talk more about in physiology and other subjects. Normally in male there is no glandular tissue, there is not fatty tissue, only we have areola as well as the small nipple projection, but there are no lactiferous ducts, no glandular tissue, no alveoli, and even no adipose tissue. So that is the normal part of the male breast. But if they become enlarged, the condition of enlargement of the presence of breast in female and in male is known as gynecomastia. Why it occurs? It may occur at the time of puberty, but usually it regresses. So because of the hormonal changes at the time of puberty, maybe a breast will be developed, but ultimately it can regresses. Due to some side effects of the drugs you are taking for some diseases, they can enlarge your breast. A very common condition, prostatic cancer in males. If you are treating with the prostatic cancer, so prostatic cancer therapy can cause gynecomastia as a side effect. And if you have a hormonal imbalance in your body, which can cause gynecomastia. So these are the different common causes of gynecomastia, but we will talk more about in detail in physiology as well as in other subjects. So this is all about the anatomy of the breast and the development of the breast with their anomalies. If you have any further question, you can please email me. Thank you very much.